All right. Good morning, Ron. Thank you so much for joining the show with Vivian, me, and the audience of the Inside Sharing. Thank you so much for your time. All right.
It's a pleasure to be here with you and with your audience. Greetings.
Thank you. Thank you. For the audience, we have the special guest today. His name is Ron Kaufman. He is a co-founder of the Uplifting Services, the global gurus on service and customer service, and global keynote speaker. We are very honored to having you here today with the audience here. So, Vivian, can you start to the program and start asking Ron all the questions today that we can possibly do, all right?
Yep. Hi, Ron. Very nice
Hi,
to see
Vivian.
you. Yeah. So I think the audience very curious to kind of learn all the way from your starting from your international history study. So would you please share with us a bit about your self? Yeah.
Sure. I grew up in Connecticut, which is on the East Coast of the United States. And I went to an Ivy League college called Brown University. I was studying history. And after 2 years, I was quite bored with studying the world history only from Providence, Rhode Island. So I
Oh,
went to Europe and I studied in London and then I studied in France and I traveled very, very widely, not only in Europe, but around the world. And then I went back to Brown for my senior year and graduated with me, which made my parents very happy. Yeah. But what I studied was how do countries come back together after war?
mm,
In other words, why countries go to war, there's a lot written about that. But how do they manage to find their way back together aside from simply economic trade?
yeah.
And so what I was interested in were things like sister cities, which you've heard of, I'm sure, but also the role of sports. Because interestingly, what you would find is that before countries went into battle, the teams from different towns would play against each other in certain sports. And then after that was all over, after all the fighting was over, the same people that were doing this would go back and start playing again. And so if you think about things like ping pong diplomacy between the United States and China, it was a ping pong game, but it said a lot more than ping pong.
Yeah.
Or you look at the Olympics and how even countries that are fighting with each other all go under the same banner of the Olympic Games. And so that's really about my background. I was very involved in Frisbee sports when they were just getting started. And there's a rule in one of the games that's called the spirit of the game. And the rule says that the players on the field are responsible for the quality of play. In other words, there are no referees. So you can't say, well, what does the referee say? You and the other players have to work it out together. And that spirit of the game has carried throughout my entire life because from my standpoint, Vivian, you, your husband, your audience, we're the players. And we're all here on the field playing in the game of life. And it's our responsibility to manage the spirit of the game.
Yes. So how did that ended up for you? For the core spirit of the game, ended up a career outstanding in shifting to a customer service consultancy and writing books about customer service. Can you help us to explain that aha movement of a
Right.
transformation? Yes.
How did that happen?
Yeah. How did that happen?
So back in the 1980s, Singapore's manufacturing base went to China. And Singapore's data operations and call centers went to India. And the little country of Singapore realized it had to move up the value chain, which meant creating higher value experiences for customers. That's called service. Now, today, Singapore is known for financial service, legal service, educational service, hospitality, convention service, research, design, logistics. It's all services. But back at the end of the 1980s, the population of the country had been trained to work in factories. Six Sigma, zero defects. Don't make a mistake. But when you're serving customers, they change their minds. Different customers want different things. Things are more fluid. You need to be more flexible, more responsive, more creative. So the government of Singapore decided to educate the entire adult working population in service. And they found some service experts, but what they couldn't find was someone who knew how to make adult education fun. How do you make it engaging? How do you make it emotionally meaningful? And my background in organizing Frisbee festivals all over the world came in very handy. So they invited me to come to Singapore and work on the project for 1 week. At the end of the week, they asked me to stay another week. Then they asked me to stay for a month. Then they asked me to be the project manager for the curriculum development team for 7 months. And then after that, the work kept coming and coming and coming. And I've now been living in Singapore for 31 years. I'm a citizen of Singapore now. And for 29 of those years, I was flying all over the world, more than 100 flights every year, including many times to Vietnam. My wife and I adore Hanoi. And then COVID came and said, sit down. And so for the past 2 years, I've been teaching all over the world, but more like this, using Microsoft Teams or other platforms. That's how I became an expert. When you work in one field for 30 years, you learn a lot.
But yeah, our curiosity is wrong. Because we have so many professions in the world, right? So many areas of topics to become an expert with. Some people are supposed to be expert in marketing or whatsoever, but you chose to, be an expert and in the area of customer service. And what happened? Why?
Well, I would go a little bit beyond customer service. So when I started working with this Singapore group that was called, it was about a service center. And I said, okay, what do you mean by service? And they couldn't give me a good definition. They said, make people happy, give the customer what they want, satisfy people, make the customer loyal, or serve other people the way you want to be served. Well, I want you to think about that. That's really bad advice. Because if the customer is not like you, and you serve them the way you want to be served, they're not getting what they want. So I ended up studying this quite carefully, and I wrote the definition. Service is taking action to create value for someone you care about. Okay? Service is taking action. It could be over the phone. It could be over the counter. It could be answering a question. It could be making a recommendation. It could be providing training, upgrade, installation, problem solving, whatever it is. Service is taking action. But it's only service if the action creates value for someone. Well, wait a minute. With that definition, everybody is in service. It's not just external customer service. The IT department is providing service. The HR department is providing service. The finance department is providing service. The advertising agency is providing service. Everybody. It's a whole world of service. But it's not taught in school. So we're literally educating people to go out into workforce with some technical skill, but they don't understand that the purpose is not to be an expert. The purpose is to create more value for other people. And that's what service is all about. So then I worked in airlines, airport, hospitality, hospitals, financial companies, IT companies, manufacturing companies, oil and gas companies, B2B, B2C, B2B2C. When you literally get that amount of experience, then I started to understand, okay, how are great service cultures created? What are the key elements for that to work?
So with that being said, Ron, so how would a great service culture be? in your explanation, in your definition, and what the benefits coming for organizations if they can build a great service culture then.
Yeah. Imagine a house,
Yes.
a normal house. The foundation must be very strong. Yeah. And the foundation of a great culture of service is what I call actionable service education. In other words, we have to teach people about service and about how to improve service. And we have to teach it in a way where it's not like, yes, I went to that class. It's got to be taught in a way that people can immediately put it to work. And you have to provide that for everybody in the organization because nobody got it in school. Now, there's a couple of exceptions. For example, if you're in the tourism and hospitality business, you learned about customer service. If you're in healthcare and you're in nursing, for example, you learn that it's not just about the diagnosis and the surgery and the treatment. It's about the human being.
Yeah.
And so you naturally, but those are more the exceptions that prove the rule. Most people who come out as a banker, as an engineer, as an IT expert, as, whatever field, they think I'm good at doing this rather than the purpose of this is to serve other people. So the educational foundation must be created. Clear?
Clear, yes.
Okay. And it's not just for the people who talk to the external customer. It's got to be everybody. In fact, many organizations start by doing it with the internal service providers, the legal department, the IT department, the HR department. Why? So that their colleagues get a better internal service experience. Well, then it's a lot easier for them to give the external customer better service. But if we go to the external service provider, like the customer service department, and say, do better, do better, do better, but you don't give them better internal service, you're going to frustrate them. Okay? So the foundation of the house is actionable service education.
So with building the foundation where we have the actionable service, basically, what I invited a person joining to the show earlier a month ago, and they say basically we human beings have a tendency of providing great care for one another in nature. Yeah, so it means that I come to you, Ron, with the intention to provide the best in my ability to do service to you, service to Vivian or the audience of my show, right? So, but then if we would want to build a standardized of customer service where we say, hey, that is the standard of great customer service, how do leaders? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, the moment you say standard, most people will listen in terms of process. What is the standard procedure? What is the standard action that we take? The standard should be that the experience people get is at a certain standard across the board. So I give you an example. Let's say the standard is that you want to serve people the way they desire. Okay? Not, oh my God, we're not talking that level of service, and we're not talking just meeting expectations. We're talking about serving people the way they desire. Well, do you have clients? You do, right? Yes. Do you have some clients who really appreciate that everything is communicated by email?
Yes, we do.
Do you have other clients who would rather talk to you on the phone?
Yes, of course.
Do you have other clients who would rather actually do it in real time, face-to-face meetings?
Yes, we do. Absolutely.
Do you have some clients who actually appreciate when you send them the latest by text? Okay. Now tell me, what's the standard?
There's no standard.
No, there is. The standard is that you serve each customer the way they desire. But now think about that for your company. You have to teach people that the standard is the experience. not that the standard is what they were trained to do by the policy, the process, and the procedure. So that's why I don't say that the foundation is service training. No, it's service education. We have to teach people how to think about service differently. Then they can figure out what is the right action for me to take.
But Vivian, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Viv.
So I think that's very, very nice thing. A lot of companies pretty much putting that kind of training standard. You need to do A, B, C, D, and eventually I think the customer service kind of lost this kind of sense how to support the client the way they want. So from your opinion, how would you deter the client from that kind of engaging the goal setting, move beyond the standard setting, but to build the foundation of it? Because it seems to them easier to measure by giving you standard, you follow procedure, and this is the result. But to bring them out of that kind of thinking,
Yeah.
Can you please share? Yeah.
Well, that's what I've been doing with companies for years. And you're absolutely right. It's easier to just follow the procedure and check the checklist and say, hey, I did what I was supposed to do. The moment we turn it around and say, our intention as a company is to create more value, because service is taking action to create value. Why is my brand called Uplifting Service? Because whatever value we're delivering now, we want to create more value. So how do we figure that out? Do we just go back and look at our process and our procedure and our checklist? Or should we talk to our customer and find out what is it that they want? Now, they've already told you every single time they've ever made a complaint. Every single customer complaint is already telling you in one way what they value that you're not providing. But they're also telling you with every compliment. But your people aren't listening. They're following the procedure. Right? So we have to bring them tools that help them look at the customer experience from the customer's point of view. Now, customer in this case could also be a colleague inside the company. In other words, I did what I was supposed to do, but what was the experience on the other side? So one of the many, many tools that I've created is called the 6 levels of service, which goes from terrible, where you break the promise, to basic, where you do the minimum, but it's not a nice experience for the person that you did it for. Like you're late or you're incomplete or you're impolite. Then the next level is called expected, but that's just because you followed the procedure. Then comes the level that's called desired, like I was talking just now with Ha and saying you serve them the way they like it. Then the level is called surprising, where you know what they value and you do something better that way. Like, whoa, I didn't expect you to do it that well. So, for example, somebody likes it by email, but you start making really sure that your emails are perfectly formatted, they follow a certain sequence, the subject titles are crystal clear, the way you actually set up the archive, all of those things that you can do with email that make it fantastic. It's like somebody saying, let's have face-to-face meetings. And you send them an invitation and you remind them what materials to bring and you send the agenda ahead of time and the meeting room is beautiful and all the materials are prepared and there's a follow-up report. I mean, that's a great meeting. Now, in some companies, you could say that's expected. But in many companies, it's not that standard yet, right? Okay, so we got surprising. And then you get one last level, is called unbelievable, like, oh my gosh. Now, here's the thing that everyone needs to understand about these 6 levels. It's an escalator in motion going down. If you do something unbelievable for a customer, it will only be unbelievable the first time you do it.
Yeah.
Because if you do it another time, you already did it before. It's not unbelievable anymore. But it might be a nice surprise that you did it again. By the third time, it's what they like. Desired. By the fourth time, it's expected. By the fifth time, basic. So what we need to do is build a culture where every single person, every single day is saying, how do I step up? What can I do better? What can I do different? What can I introduce? What can I change? What can I stop? And be curious about the experience of the person who is being served, whether that's the customer or the colleague. And that's what I mean by actionable service education. And I've just described one tool, one principle called the 6 levels. There are a whole series in our courses. So that's the foundation of the house. Okay, let's go to the roof.
What happened at the roof?
Yeah, the roof of the house is called service leadership.
Yes.
If the leaders do not protect what's going on inside the house, it will destroy what's happening inside. All right? So how many leaks do you need to have in your roof to mess up your house?
I think even with just one, right?
And it doesn't even need to be a big leak.
Yes.
Now imagine you have a leadership team and you have the chief finance officer who says, well, service is not my job. You have a leak because the finance department is a service department.
Yes.
To everybody else within the company, right? So there's a lot of work that has to be done with the leadership team as a team to help them understand why we're doing this, what it is we're doing, what we're asking your people to do. So that's the roof, okay? And we do that through service leadership programs where we bring the leaders together online. We work with them over a period of weeks. So maybe there's a reading assignment and then there's a 2-hour session. And then there's a little application assignment and then another 2-hour session. And then there's another assignment and a final session. Well, by the end of that 3-week program, these leaders understand what we're doing here in this company. And they understand the initiative to build the culture and their role in it. Clear?
Clear.
Foundation, roof.
Okay.
What's in the middle?
Yes, what's in the middle then?
Okay, if we build a real house, we're going to bring cement, steel, wood, windows, tile, pipes, wires, and we're going to fit them all together to make a house. When you build the culture of an organization, you have things like, do we all share the same service vision? Do we all use the same language about service that we can use across the whole company? Like terrible, basic, expected, desired, surprising, unbelievable, and the stairs are going down like an escalator. Are we hiring the right people?
Yeah.
The new people that we're hiring, are we giving them an onboarding orientation experience that introduces them to the culture the right way? Okay, I'm going to keep going. How are we communicating with our people inside the company? Is it a newsletter? Is it a bulletin board? Is it a town hall? Is it a video? How do we communicate? How do we recognize and reward people who are doing a great job with service? Not only for customers, but also for colleagues. How do we recognize people for service improvement? How do we recognize people for service recovery? How do we recognize people for service innovation? How do we capture the voice of the customer? The complaints, the compliments, and where does that go? What are we measuring? And are our metrics aligned with the culture we want to produce? So now I've shown you 8 different ideas. There are 4 more. But we'll do those another time, okay? And those are called the 12 building blocks of service culture.
Mm.
And when you go into the book, you'll see a little framework of the house with the leadership, the foundation, and all 12 building blocks. And there's a chapter on every single part.
But Ron, if we would want to build an unbeatable service culture, would it start from the roof first, or would it start from the foundation? Where if we're coming from nowhere and we would want to build that up, right?
Yeah, very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Because the house is what's actually going to get built. But you don't build a house by saying, go. You have to design the house. You have to have the architecture. You've got to figure out the engineering and order the materials, and there's work. So you're talking about what I call the implementation roadmap.
Mm.
And the implementation roadmap begins by getting the leadership team aligned. The leadership team itself needs to say, aha, I get it. This is what we're going to do. And they need to know it's going to take 12, 24, 36 months. Then you need what's called a steering committee. You need a group of senior people who have authority. Because when you start working with educating everybody, when you start working in these various building blocks, you need people to understand how do they work now and who's going to be involved in making changes. And then you work out your plan for the building blocks. You don't change everything all at once. Maybe you start with some communication. First of all, you definitely start by getting a clear vision.
Mm.
Then you figure out how are we going to recognize people when they do better.
Mm.
Then you can start the education so they know what to do better. Then you can recognize them. Then you can communicate that they did it. Yay. Then you make sure you're hiring the right people. Then the new people, you get them involved with the education so they're doing the right thing from the beginning, and the whole thing grows out over time. But you have to plan how you're going to implement this, and that's the implementation roadmap. That's the last section of my book.
So we start with the leadership team and a steering committee, and then we start to grow from
building blocks, right? And then the education, right.
Yes. But Ron, with the ever-changing and pressuring that business leaders and businesses have been facing recently, right? How can leaders constantly be role model and to because they are the roof of the foundation, right, of the house, and if any leak from them will basically make an impact on the culture that they're building. And I'm sure that we are all under a lot of pressure for the work that we have been doing in building that culture. How can we build how can we measure or put the implementations where we can control and make sure that all the leaders are role model for this?
Well, you've asked a lot of things all together. There's a lot in what you said, yeah? When we work with a leadership team, we introduce something called the 7 rules of service leadership. So these are behaviors that leaders need to understand and follow. And some of them are very obvious, like you need to declare that service improvement is going to be a top priority. Okay? Because some leaders will say, no, profit, that's a top priority. Or innovation, that's a top priority. Or speed, that's a top priority. And I'm not saying that service, it has to be the only one, but it has to be one. Okay? And then you have to walk the talk. You have to actually, your actions have to show that you believe it, right? And then you have to talk the talk. In other words, every time people hear from you, they need to hear that you're actually using that language, that you're asking about service, that you're concerned about customer experience. You can't just say, yeah, I believe it. It's okay. Now let's get back to work. But one of the rules that I want to explain to you is rule number 4, and it's called measure what really matters.
Measure what matters. Yeah.
Okay? Now let me explain. Very often senior leaders are measured on what's called lagging indicators. Lagging indicators are things like top line revenue, bottom line profit, client account retention, percentage of market share, stock price and value. You know, these are really lagging indicators, and they're lagging because they show up after everything you've done. Then you can measure it. Okay? So what would be a leading indicator that you're going to get these final results? Well, if all your survey scores are good, if your customer satisfaction score is going up, if your employee engagement score is going up, if your customer loyalty index is going up, if they're all good, right? Your customer effort score is going down. I mean, you know, everything's going in the right direction. You're going to make the money. You're going to get the final results. Okay. But those surveys, you don't do it every day. It's every week, every month, every quarter, sometimes once a year. So what would be a leading indicator that would let you know that you're going to get good scores? How many compliments are we getting? The leading indicator of your scores is that you're getting a lot of compliments. They're coming in from customers and they're coming in from colleagues to each other. Hey, thank you for doing that. Wow, that was really a nice surprise. Boy, you guys went the extra mile. Oh, you saved my life. You know, that compliments. Okay? If you're getting a lot of compliments, you'll get a higher score, and that will lead to the final results. Now, here's the last one. What do you need to do to get a compliment? No one is going to give you a compliment for doing what was expected. If you follow the procedure and you do the standard, you're not going to get a compliment for that. You're supposed to do that. Yeah. So the only way to get a compliment is if you do something that was unexpected or that was a little bit beyond expectations or that was a surprise. Now, how are you going to get your staff to take that action? First, you've got to encourage them to come up with new ideas. Like, well, what if we did this? Should we try that? Have we thought about this? Have we ever done that before? Hey, what do you think of this idea? Not every idea is a good idea. So it would be nice if, for example, the team came up with 20 ideas. Then they could say 10 of these are stupid ideas. Okay, good. Then they could say of these 10 ideas, 5 of these ideas look like they could be really good ideas. Let's work on them. You know what? 3 of these ideas, we should do it. But what was the most leading indicator? Number of new ideas. If you don't have enough new ideas churning from your people, then you're not going to get enough new actions. Then you're not going to get enough compliments. Then you're not going to get higher scores. Then you're not going to make the money in the final indicators. So when we say measure what really matters, the leader is the one who needs to be asking their people for more ideas. And you can't just say, give me an idea. You've got to be a leader of that conversation.
Ron, if we generate so many ideas and assuming that people are very willing to generate ideas and contribute their best at it, right? And then if we have too many ideas at hand and we are not able to do a thorough evaluations of idea in a standard of fair, in a standard of real contributions, and you know the excitement of the people will, you know, one day will also be dropped because they see that how can we measure that?
Yeah. Hold on. Remember all of these things. Remember the house.
Yes.
You have to have all these things connected to each other. So I'll give you an example. One of our clients, they have this new ideas program, right? They encourage people to generate ideas, and you use the right word, generate new ideas.
Yes.
And the ideas go into the computer. And they all show up on this platform, and everybody can see all the ideas, and they start to vote. So what happens is you start to see these ideas that everybody agrees is a good idea rising up. Once a good idea gets beyond a certain threshold, Then they open up another component of the platform so that people can type in their ideas to make the idea a better idea. Or they can type in ideas about how they think we could implement that idea. Well, then what happens is certain ideas keep rising and rising, and people start piling in. And, you know, by the time you get to the top ideas, everybody feels like it's our ideas.
Yes.
But now you need the IT department, you need the communications team, you need the leaders to understand what's going on, you need some recognition program that's going to be there to help praise people whose ideas got implemented, and the teams, and you've got to actually praise not only the ideas, but the implementation.
Yes.
And then you have to close the loop. So when the new idea goes out and the customers say, wow, you guys never did that before, you got to take that compliment, you got to video that customer, you got to bring it back, you've got to show it to everybody. You're building a culture,
yes,
of continuously uplifting service.
Yes, Ron, thank you so much for that. One of the things I would want to ask also is related to idea generating, because that related to our ability to be creative, be innovative in thinking, right? And then one of the person joining sharing a research from NASA. When we were young, basically, when we was a kid, our creativity is about 85% or so, and then when we at 18 years old, our creativity level dropped down to 3%. And then all the way down, right? Unfortunately, but if we want to build an unbeatable service culture where people generate ideas, where idea nurtures and promote it, which means that we have to also build the people the competency of being creative and being innovative, think outside the box. Am I correct on that one?
Yes. However, we're not building competency in being creative. Building competency in focusing on someone who we serve, internally or externally. We're coming to understand better what it is that they value. We're learning how to observe the experience of being served by us from their point of view. Then we're looking at what we do and thinking about how can we change what we do to create more value or to create a better experience. Now, at that point, you could say, yes, we're encouraging creativity, but notice it's very focused and defined for the sake of a certain kind of positive outcome. Now, what we've seen over and over and over again is when people learn these tools, they may learn them at work, but then they start to see the possibilities of applying these service improvement tools at home, in their neighborhood, in their community, in life.
That's what I wrote in here. I basically, if we have a very beautiful house, but in the bad neighborhood, so the house not gonna be beautiful as much as it could be, right? So,
and so then what's the job of the person who lives in the beautiful house? To go out and meet the neighbors.
How do we do that then? How we encourage people to get out of their house and start uplifting the neighborhood?
You start by putting your focus on someone else. You care about the well-being of someone. So we're coming towards the end of our time, but let me explain something. When I wrote the book, the definition I used was service is taking action to create value for someone else.
Yeah.
The exception would be self-service. I take action to create value for myself. Okay. But then COVID came along. And I thought quite deeply, but for more years than just COVID. And I think that real service, like the kind of service that you and I would like to see happening all over the world, is service is taking action to create value for someone you care about. not just someone else. Okay? Maybe if you're selling cigarettes, you really don't care about the other person. But the kind of service we're talking about to make a better world or a better neighborhood, you want it to be someone you care about. Now, what is care? And so when I started studying that, nobody could give me a good definition. That's okay. I'm a good person to write definitions for abstract phenomenon that embrace the entire of humanity, like service. So here's the way I now define care. Care is concern, like I care about you. But that's not enough. It's concern and commitment to someone's well-being. Care is concern and commitment to well-being. Now, it could be the well-being of Vietnam. It could be the well-being of your company. It could be the well-being of your children. It could be the well-being of your sports team. It could be the well-being of history. It could, whatever it is you care about, taking good care means that your commitment is actually happening in real action. Well, that's called service. Service is taking action to create value that contributes to the well-being of something you care about.
Yeah.
And this needs to be taught because it's not in the school curriculum.
Wow. I think that today we learn a lot about customer service. We learn a lot about redefine the definitions of service and the care and things like that. Thank you so much, Mr. Ron, for spending the morning and share with you and the audience here on how and the reason why we need to build a foundation and the house of customer service. All right. And if there is one thing that you can can share as a closure for this conversation,
Sure.
What would be your advice for this?
Well, I'm going to type it into the chat. It says, a life well lived.
A life well lived.
A life well lived contributes to the well-being of others.
Wow.
That's my personal motto. A life well lived contributes to the well-being of others. We're all mortal. We're only going to be here for as long as we get the privilege of being here. Let's use our lives to contribute to the well-being of other people.
Wow. Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for the amazing, amazing closing note. And definitely, we will try our best every single day to continue to do our best for other people around us, and with the spirit that you've been sharing, Ron. So we wish you all the best always. We wish your family all the best, and then hopefully one day if you come to Vietnam, you and
Again.
I will be seeing you in person. We would love to see you in person.
Wonderful.
If you fly in anywhere in Vietnam, I'll definitely, you and I will fly there to see you. All right.
Looking forward to seeing you again, Vivian. It's been a pleasure to be with you. Best wishes to all of your colleagues. You know about my website. They can go there and find all kinds of free tools, downloads, etc. Thank you again for the privilege of being with you today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Happy holiday season.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.